Hello, my name's Rachel Evans. I'm a basket maker and I'm based here at Froggle Wharf in the Churnup Valley, right next to the canal. And I work here making baskets throughout the year. I grow my own willow. I have a selection of willow varieties that I grow in different places around the Churnup Valley, which I cut in the winter and dry out in here, and then I use to make my baskets.
That's a fascinating thing to do. How did you come to learn these skills?
So I've always liked being outside and natural materials. I used to collect fossils and stones and things like that. And I worked in conservation for a while when I went to university, studied geography and came out, and I actually worked on nature reserves. And I worked in forestry for a while. I had unlimited amount of materials to use to make baskets. So I used to make that of all kinds of things: hazel, willow, ash. And went from there really. Just did it as a hobby for many years. And then about 15 years ago I set up my business. My hobby was getting very busy and people were asking me to teach them as well as make baskets for them. The thing for me about making is using natural materials. That's my thing. I love the seasonality of it. For me, the growing of it is really important. So there are around 300 types of willow that grow in this country. So I grow probably about 20 different varieties, and all the varieties are very different. So they have different bark colours. So all the colours that you can see, generally they're different varieties. But you can play with the bark colours by drying. When you dry it out, your material, if you leave it outside in the sunshine, it can change the colour. If you dry it out inside in the dark, then they might go a bit darker. So every year I think of one of my varieties I will play with a little bit and leave some in different conditions just to see what happens to it. So some of the green ones go like a peachy orangey colour, and some of the very dark red ones, if you leave in the sun, they will go very light orange as well.
The willow that you have that we see around the workshop now, is that 1 year's growth?
Yes. So my willow, you cut the willow, so you plant the willow very close together so that they compete for light as they're growing up, so they get nice long straight pieces growing up. And after a year you cut them, so once the leaves fall off in the winter they go dormant, and that's when you cut the willow. So you cut it in bundles, sort them into sizes and leave them to dry, and normally about the end of April they are dry. You can use the willow fresh, that's called green willow, nothing to do with the colour, but if you use green willow in your baskets, your basket will, when it dries, will go all wobbly. So what basket makers normally do is we dry the willow out, and then when we're ready to use it, we have to soak it. So all the varieties are different in soaking times, but generally it's about a day per foot soaking time. I have some varieties that take 3 times that, so I might have some varieties that take 3 days per foot. So if I'm using 7-foot willow, that's 3 weeks soaking time. So you have to be quite well prepared in advance. In 2020, in lockdown, I started to think about other kinds of materials that I could use. I had dabbled with them over the years, so rush, I've got some rush just behind me. I gathered that from a river on one of the nature reserves that I used to work on. And also I started to use hazel as well. So I didn't know very much about using hazel to make baskets. I started out by watching a video online by someone called Lewis Goldwater, and the video is about 3 hours long. It's really good. And learned how to split hazel down and use strips of it to make baskets. So that's been quite important for me. I live in the Churnup Valley and we have acres and acres of overstood hazel coppice, and there's lots of hazel. A lot of the woodlands around here are unmanaged because the slopes are it's very slopey. So there's no machinery you can get in and out, no vehicles can get in and out. So everything, all the hazel that I gather with landowners' permission, I have to climb slopes to get and gather by hand and drag it all out. But to me that's the whole joy of doing it really. I love the gathering. So I'm just going to gather some bits of hazel
Do some split hazel work. So this hazel is not ideal because really what you want is hazel that's grown in very dark woodland, and you get these lovely silvery barked growths, but this one's a good size, so I can either use it for split hazel work or use it in my stick and strand baskets as a base or something like that. Get this one as well. This one's got a little knobbly bit there, but we could probably use the bottom for something else underneath that.
So here's a few of the different styles of basket that I make. The two main styles are stake and strand, which is when you have stakes coming up the baskets and the weavers go in and out, they're the strands. And you start with a base of whatever shape, round, oval or D-shaped, and then you insert the stakes into that. They come up the sides and you weave in and out of those stakes, and the stakes make the border at the top, and then you can put a handle on if you want to. And on the sides here you can see some of the different colours of materials. So these are all my homegrown different ones. They've got really funny names like Dicky Meadows, Daphnoides, that's Niagara cans actually, sorry. So Dicky Meadows, Niagara cans, Blackmore, and this is stripped willow here. The other style of basketry is frame basketry. So frame basketry is when you actually make the whole frame of the basket before we start weaving. So these are Welsh frame baskets. You make a hoop from a really chunky thick piece of willow or hazel or ash or whatever you have, and you put these on formers and you leave them to dry. So normally you make the hoops green. So you cut the length of willow in the winter, stick it on a hoop, and it can take up to 9 months to dry depending on how thick your hoop is. And you also cut really thick rods for ribs. You split them in half and you get them on a shave horse and use a draw knife to shave them into shape to make your ribs. And then once you've got those, you can actually join the ribs on there and start to weave your basket from side to side. So there's quite a bit of woodwork involved in making frame baskets before you start. And these again, this is all willow again, and it's willow ribs, but I sometimes use hazel and ash for ribs as well. So I make cockle baskets. They're made from hazel and they are on the Heritage Crafts Endangered Crafts Red List. Not many people in the country make them. There was one basket that was found in someone's loft, and all the baskets that we've made have come from photographs that we've sort of looked at and worked out sizes. There's a lady called Claire Rivera who spent a lot of time studying these from pictures, and then she found a lady who remembered her dad making one, and she found it in the loft, which is quite exciting. So these are the hazel cockle baskets that I talked about. So they were used in Wales for gathering cockles on the beach. They were all sizes, so they had a size for gathering the cockles on the beach, and then they had a size for taking the cooked cockles to market on the train, which was a nice smaller one, a bit more of a fancy one. And these are all made with hazel strips. So you can see the skin of the hazel on there. And these are the growth rings from a hazel rod. So you put a little nick in it, bend it over your knee, and you can peel off a whole strip, which is one growth ring. And here's some of that material. So that's hazel, 1-year-old growth ring pulled off the rod, and then you run your knife over it and make it all nice and smooth. If you cut the hazel in the winter, the bark stays on when you split it. If you cut the hazel in the summer, the bark comes off. So some of this is summer cut and some of it is winter cut. So if you look at the difference between these. And this is bark. So this is this year's bark that I collected. Quite a nice colour, this one. This is one of our homegrown willows. And that's what it looks like. It looks a little bit like a snake skin when you peel it off. And then to use it, you just put it in some hot water for about 10 minutes. And then you can cut that into strips with scissors and weave them and plait them together to make baskets. You can also just add a little layer of them in your willow or your hazel baskets as well, just to add a bit of different texture and colour.
So the baskets that you make, is it a traditional design or some of your own design? What's the variety like?
So the kind of baskets that I make often have a history. They're often traditional designs that I either stick with the traditional designs and sizes, or I make my own designs from those techniques. So over the years I've picked up lots of traditional designs. Baskets used to be the original weights and measures, so things like bushels and pecks and half pecks. Baskets were made in a particular size, and say a bushel of apples a certain size basket would hold a bushel of apples, and they were actually checked by the weights and measures people. So I'm just putting the bottom weave on this basket. This is called a wale, and it's a really strong weave that gets all your stakes in the right position. It's a W-A-L-E, wale, not a W-H-A-L-E. I think it's a French word. A lot of basket making words are French. So we do this upside down.
It's a plait under weave at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a plait, yeah. You take that outer one, jump over the top of the right hand two, and it holds it all down, but you can see I'm moving these stakes around, so when you put them in the base, you put them in pairs, but you want them evenly spaced as you go up the sides, otherwise your basket looks really uneven. So right at this stage, I'm actually moving those stakes apart a little bit to make them more evenly spaced. So I'm going to give this a bit of a bash down now, so it'll be a bit noisy. So the good thing about basket making is you don't need many tools. So I mainly use a pair of secateurs, and sometimes use a wire cutter with a spring, which is really good for getting really fine ends, and a knife, and something to wrap the willow down with. So quite often I get these from Dave Budd. He's a really good really good tool maker. But a lot of willow growers will sell them as well. So, but you can use cold chisels. I've got a few cold chisels that I used to use years ago. They're just £1. So just wrap it down with something heavy. Some basket makers wrap it down with a hand, but that hurts me. Oh, and a bodkin, a pointy tool, which you use for making holes either in the weave or in sticks. And that's pretty much it, really. You can get away with very few tools. You don't have to go out and spend loads and loads of money. To me, it's about the materials and the connection with the materials and the connection to the land as well. That's always been important to me, being outside and having a relationship with the landscape around me.
Do you think climate change might have any impact in terms of amounts of rainfall or different temperatures at different times of the year?
I think climate change will have an impact. It is having an impact on our woodland. Ash is suffering from ash dieback because fungus and different insects are coming in because the temperature's getting warmer. So who knows what will happen to all of our trees, our native trees, or even our garden plants. Things are changing. So when I grow my willow, the season to cut my willow is getting shorter every year. So I used to start cutting in October. The leaves don't fall off now till December. And I used to cut till March, and the leaves now are coming back on in February sometimes. Yeah, so the season is getting shorter, things are changing. Who knows what impact that will have on materials.
So in terms of keeping the craft going, you teach, is that right?
Yeah, so probably about 80% of my time is spent making, and about 20 to 25% of my time is spent teaching other people. So I teach beginners, I teach all levels of people. So I teach beginners how to make a basket in a day. I do more intense courses where you make a basket over a couple of days. And I also teach intermediate and more advanced makers. So I have a group of people actually that have been working with me for quite a long time now. And I have a programme of work that they can follow in the hope that they will eventually become basket makers themselves. So that's really satisfying. I do enjoy teaching like that, and I teach that in the workshop. But I also teach in various venues around the Midlands as well. Yeah, I do enjoy teaching. I enjoy passing on my skills. I do enjoy teaching beginners, but I'm slowly enjoying teaching more advanced makers, and you almost feel like you're learning together with advanced makers. And we actually share skills. I learn as much from them as they do from me, I think.
It's a very quiet and meditative pastime in some ways, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. I do get into the flow, and I can sometimes forget where I am. It could be really busy outside and I wouldn't know. And then occasionally I'll look up and think, oh, where am I? I think you do get into that flow state when you're making, don't you? Which is why it's so good for your mental health. Everything else switches off. I often listen to podcasts or talking books, but sometimes it's nice to just turn everything off.